Hello, welcome back to St Helen's Church here in Skipwith. We've been here before to have a look at the enigmatic Viking Ragnarok stone inside the Anglian tower behind me. But today we're coming back to have a look at the incredible door, because there is in fact even more ancient Christian symbols hidden in plain sight in the door there. So we're going to have another look, decipher the iconography and what that tells us about the medieval mind in terms of religious thought, but also scientific understanding of the universe and the human body. There's also evidence in there of one of the church's very powerful, wealthy patrons, Antony Bek, the Bishop of Durham and Patriarch of Jerusalem. We're also going to be considering the dedication of this church to St Helen, Helena being the mother of Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor who converted to Christianity and signed the Edict of Milan, legitimising the practice of Christianity all across the Roman Empire. My name is Chris, this is Church Searcher, and I'll see you after the map. So when we were here before, we had a look inside at the Ragnarok stone, and if you'd like to see the video on that, if you're on YouTube you can see the link up above here. We also considered the Anglian tower here with its bits of Anglian masonry hidden amongst it, the women at the sepulchre, the bare throne stone hidden in the wall there, and the little window you can see which is thought shone on the reliquary up there in the tower. But we're going to go have another look at the door here and try and work out what this iconography that we missed last time can tell us about the church here. So last time we were here we concentrated on a few particular aspects of the decoration on the door here in the wrought ironwork, particularly on the St Bridget's crosses, which you can see bottom and top, with the weave in the centre and the reed fronds sprouting out. And we linked that to the video I did on making a St Bridget's cross and St Bridget herself, which you can see up here if you're on YouTube. And then we also considered this circular icon here, particularly in relation to Bede's description of the 6 ages in the Bible, with these 6 loops going around, but also the fact I postulated that there's 8 of them, perhaps relating to Bede's description of there being 8 ages, with 2 after Judgment Day. Now there's 2 or 3 other icons in this door, particularly the cross here. Now I postulated last time that they were just sort of perhaps fancy crosses, perhaps another version of a St Bridget's cross. However, this symbol here is in fact the coat of arms of Antony Bek, the Bishop of Durham. And we see the same coat of arms inside the stained glass up in the medieval tracery inside the church in the chancel that he commissioned. So Antony Bek was born into a family of knights in 1245. He was educated at Oxford University and then went into the clergy before becoming a close ally and advisor to Prince Edward, the heir to King Henry III. In 1270 he accompanied Prince Edward on crusade to the Holy Land, and upon returning he was made Bishop of Durham. Now he became closely allied to King Edward and actually went on campaign with him up to Scotland, and he actually commanded divisions of the army at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298, until he was eventually made Patriarch of Jerusalem in 1306 and eventually passed away in 1311. Now he was very wealthy, very powerful, had a large retinue of knights, but he commissioned lots of building all around the area, including the chancel of the church here, which at the time had connections to Durham. So it's possible, therefore, that as well as this from the coat of arms, the icon above it here is two of those coat of arms combined to create this sort of foliated double cross. Now, if we step back from the door briefly, the other iconography on display here is literally hidden in plain sight. It's these massive circular shapes which kind of make this door look a bit like a dwarvish door out of Lord of the Rings or something like that. But I had a bit of an epiphany on this door while watching a documentary on the BBC about St. Patrick, which is a brilliant documentary. I really recommend it. I'll put a link down below. It's currently on iPlayer, but it's towards the end of that documentary, about 52 minutes, they start talking about the spread of Celtic Christianity from Ireland up into Scotland and down into the kingdom of Northumbria, the Anglian kingdom north of the Humber. And it talks about the spread of monasticism and these seats of learning at places like Holy Iron, Lindisfarne, at Durham, at Jarrow, York, all these monastic centres. And while it was talking about these things, images of manuscripts were coming up on the screen. And one in particular caught my eye because it exactly resembles this pattern you can see on the door. It wasn't a close resemblance, it's exact. And I took a screenshot of that and sent it to a friend of the channel, Juliana, who went online, did a Google image search and sent me loads and loads of links of things to explore and read about. And it took me to a potential answer for what this symbol means. So the manuscript in question was created by Isidore of Seville. He was the Bishop of Seville and lived between 560 AD through to 636. And he concerned himself with preserving and copying ancient classical thought from Roman and Greek sources and combining them with medieval Christian thought, often in the form of Christian allegory. And he actually created one of the first encyclopedias called the Etymology. And in 1997, he was named by Pope John Paul II as the patron saint of the internet because of his connection with preserving and disseminating knowledge. So the manuscript that this relates to is called Natura Rerum, or On the Nature of Things. And it's this big treatise where he takes classical thinking and teaching from Greek and Roman sources on astronomy, meteorology, medicine, time, and he combines it with medieval Christian thought. However, he doesn't draw on any of the sources in Genesis, for example, which kind of deals with a lot of the same themes. Instead, he goes towards more scientific thought from the Greek and Roman sources. Now, Natura Rerum also goes by another name, Liber Rotarum, or the Book of Wheels, because each of the 7 or 8 chapters is illustrated by Isidore himself with these circular diagrams. And in fact, he was pretty much the first person to popularise this idea of using circular diagrams as a mnemonic device to remember facts and figures and things, just like the one you can see here. And this book actually inspired Bede himself, who we often refer to on this channel. He wrote a work himself called On the Nature of Things and Time, and he expanded on some of the ideas in Liber Rotarum, or the Book of Wheels. So the chapter in Isidore's work that this relates to is called De Temporibus, or the times, or the seasons, and it's a diagram which shows the cardinal points, north, east, south, west. Interestingly, north, east, south, west, east at the top, based on the rising sun, and also a lot of the classical maps from Roman and Greek sources having east at the top. It combines those compass positions with the seasons: winter, spring, summer, autumn. And then essentially those 4 quadrants are separated again with the other 4 arcs, combining the elements. And they are calibus, heat; frigidus, cold; sica, dryness; and humidor, wet. So it's a combination of those elements in opposition which effectively create the seasons, which can also be characterised by the general compass points on a map. So you've got north, septentriones; the east, orient; the west, occidens; and meriden, the south. And in the centre of the diagram he has the word annus, or a year. So it's a depiction of the cycles of the year, the seasons of the year, combined with the compass points on the map. And it's a combination of all these things that relate to the elements. Fire being a combination of dryness and hotness, air being a combination of hotness and moistness, water being a combination of moistness and cold, and earth being a combination of cold and dry. So it's in the text of the manuscripts that Isidore's sources become clear, because he talks a lot about Platonic theories. Plato, the philosopher. In particular, he mentions this idea of using circular diagrams bisected by arcs to explain the macrocosm and the microcosm. The macrocosm being the universe, the world, being impacted upon by the elements: earth, wind, fire and water, and also, in this case, hotness, coldness, dryness and wetness. The microcosm is seen as the human body being a reflection of that. And the health of the body is also impacted upon by the balance of those various elements. And the body made up of a combination of blood, black bile, yellow bile and phlegm, with blood being the equivalent of air, made up of hotness and moistness, yellow bile being the equivalent of fire, hotness and dryness, and black bile being the equivalent of the earth, coldness and dryness, and finally phlegm being the equivalent of water, that's coldness and wetness. So to be in good health was to have an equal balance of all of these elements. It's where you get a deficit of one particular thing or an abundance of one particular thing where you fall into ill health. So in this way the door is symbolising the macrocosm, the seasons, the cardinal points, the combination of all the elements, but it's also a reminder of the microcosm, what's going on inside the body. So I suppose in Christian allegorical thought, it's this idea of, I suppose, the body being a temple. When Jesus is asked, where is the kingdom of heaven? Jesus replies, the kingdom of heaven is within. And so this could be some sort of Christian reminder of that. But of course, on a lot of doors we do see the seasons depicted in signs of the zodiac, in the labours of the month. So it's probably likely in the agricultural community that it's the seasonal aspects that is the important thing. Perhaps other more learned people would also know the spiritual implications. And so in general, this is a reminder that time is sort of quite a sacred construct, as explained by Bede on the nature of time. And so this is probably a reminder as you go into the church. But why and how was this made, I suppose? Well, not far from here we looked at the church at Aulne and the doorway there, and we postulated that because it was made by masons from York Minster, they perhaps had access to the library at York Minster, or at least the master mason might have, and they might have taken inspiration by a copy of an Anglo-Saxon bestiary to create the decorations around the door there, which also actually have signs of the zodiac and the labours of the month around the door. Again, the passage of time as indicated on the door here. So perhaps something similar happened here. Perhaps the craftsmen had access to the library at York Minster. Selby Abbey is not far from here, it's only 10 minutes down the road. So perhaps the craftsmen here took artistic inspiration from the diagrams inside that book, or perhaps they were instructed by someone of learning, like Antony Bek, to create this work of art in the door with all these hidden spiritual meanings, so that people coming in from the outside, from the macrocosm, entering the body of the church, the microcosm, could ruminate and meditate on these symbols on the door. So this is the chancel that Antony Bek commissioned, and it's all around inside the church here that you see a few images of Saint Helen. Now, Saint Helen is named after Helena, the mother of Constantine the Great, the Emperor of Rome. She was born in 246 AD and died 330, so she lived into her early 80s. And it's towards the end of her life that she went on a tour of the Holy Land, supposedly collecting various relics, including the true cross. And you can see she's depicted holding the cross, the statue there, and also in the stained glass in the window. Now, there's about 130 churches all around the UK dedicated to St Helen, but there's particularly loads all around Yorkshire for some reason. Now, that could be due to the fact that Constantine, her son, was proclaimed emperor here in York in 306 AD. He famously converted to Christianity in 312. In 313 AD, he signed the Edict of Milan, which effectively legitimised Christianity as a faith without persecution throughout the Roman Empire. It's shortly afterwards that he converted to Christianity, around 312, and it was in 313 that he signed the Edict of Milan, which essentially legitimised Christianity as a religion that could be practised all around the Roman Empire without fear of persecution for the very first time. It was later, 325 AD, that he held the Council of Nicaea, where the church leaders came together to agree on what Christians believed. And we know it was at the Council of Nicaea that there was a bishop from York. Around this area there was also a Celtic Christian saint called Saint Hieu, and we'll be visiting a church associated with her pretty soon. It's possible therefore that a lot of the churches and holy wells and springs around here dedicated to Saint Helen were once dedicated to Saint Hieu, and as she fell out of fashion have been rededicated to Saint Helen, who became a particularly popular saint in the medieval period when Geoffrey of Monmouth, the medieval historian who also liked to combine myth with fact to quite a large degree, proclaimed that St Helen was in fact the daughter of old King Cole of Colchester. Now, the church here is very, very old. The tower dates back to 930 AD, but through excavations around the tower, we know that there was a building here in the 7th and 8th centuries. And associated with that building, there are burials as well. So we know it was probably a church. And it's in the fabric of the tower, there's Anglian sculpture, including the bear throne. And there's also this depiction of the women at the sepulchre. Now, interestingly, it's Constantine who built the Church of the Sepulchre in Jerusalem. And Helena is said to have brought back relics. There's ones particularly in Cyprus that are from her, with everything from the shroud of Jesus, the ropes that bound him, along with the true cross as well. So perhaps here there was a reliquary from the sepulchre, or one of St. Helen's own relics. Who knows? Now, interestingly, there's a room at the top, which we mentioned in the previous video on the Ragnarok stone, but there's a room in the tower which has a little alcove in, which is interpreted to be a reliquary, to hold a relic. And there's a special little window in the tower which shines the southern sun directly upon that. And we read recently in our video on Rudston, which you can see up here, that Pope Gregory encouraged the use of relics to bring people into churches for feast days. And there's an interpretation here that in the tower wall, you can see at the end of the building here, there's this sort of bricked up window, which was where on feast days, it's associated with whatever relics they had here, you'd have the relic be brought out from that little chamber up in the tower, safely protected, and it would be displayed to pilgrims down here in the body of the church from that window high up in the tower. So it's an intriguing thought. So this is a church that just keeps revealing itself. It's quite an amazing place to visit, and it really stands as a bit of a useful marker for where we've got to here with the Church Searcher channel. We've got loads of plans of places to visit, so I hope you join me for more videos. And while I was filming here, I actually met the church historian here, and we had a really useful chat, so many thanks to her. She shared with me details of the bank account if you want to donate to the church here. They recently had their lead stolen from the roof, which has caused all sorts of problems. So if you'd like to, I'll leave the details below. Without further ado, I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, keep church searching.